Hey guys, what's going on? Welcome back to another episode of What Makes You a Kingdom Kid. Today we have Donna
Yarbrough,
aka on Donna. She's going to be talking to us about a lot of the challenges that she's went through as a child and then as a teenager and as an adult. And she covers a lot of different things in her life, from molestation, being a parent, drugs, overcoming relationships, and it's really going to be a great interview, so we're going to get started.
Okay.
How you doing, Donna?
I'm fine today.
I want to thank you for this interview.
God bless you thank you very much for having me here.
Okay, so the first question I wanted to ask you is, when was your first understanding that God was real? Or when did you know? Because under my impression, you always had a relationship with God, so I want to take you back to, when did you have that first realization that God does exist?
As a child, and my mom brought us into that faith,
Right.
of God and believing and praying. So that was my foundation. I want to say maybe like 5 years old, 6 years old, right before we were going to school.
Right. Okay. And you had brothers and sisters?
Yes, I have 3 sisters.
Okay.
And no brothers.
Okay. So what was your relationship like with your father?
I didn't have a relationship with my father. My father left when my mom was 19. She had
Your
3
biological
children.
dad?
Yes.
Right.
When she was 19 and she had 3 children already. So I didn't have any type of relationship with him.
With your real dad. But your mom was married?
Yes, my mother was married at 16 years old.
Wow. At 16.
Right.
To your stepdad?
No, to my real father.
To your real dad?
So she married him at 16.
Right.
And had me. Then she had my sister Debbie at 17.
Right.
And my sister Diane at 18. 3 children by 19. And was divorced by 21.
But then remarried, right?
Then remarried. And
Okay.
had my youngest sister Barbara.
So how was your relationship with your stepfather now that after your real dad was out of the picture and your stepfather was there? How was that relationship?
It was strenuous because I was the caretaker of my sisters for a long period of time because my mom started to drink.
Right.
So I was the caretaker. So when a man came in to take over that position, I was very resentful.
Right. Okay. So that's
because I was like, you haven't been here. You don't know anything about us. And
yup. That's how kids feel with their. Yup.
Yeah. Because you're the kid, and you're
So
like.
how was that relationship with your mom?
My
as a kid.
With my mother.
Your relationship with mom.
I resented her.
Yeah.
For replacing me.
Wow.
I felt like I just
Wow.
really felt like I was being replaced. That
And I don't think
loved somebody more than me who had been there all along.
And I don't think moms feel like that's what they're doing whenever they get into new relationships. They don't feel like they're putting the kids off to the back burner, but the kids can sometimes feel like that.
I never realized that until I got older, and I realized that our mothers are young women, and before we had children,
they was doing them.
Right. And so now, they're just
trying to live their life
trying to live life, and you don't realize it until you're older.
So I want to get into the molestation part because you actually were molested by your stepfather.
Yes.
So at what age did that start, and how did that affect you at that young age?
It started around when I was 10.
Right.
10 years old.
10, wow.
Up until the time I was 14 or 15. I left home at 15.
Wow.
And every time I ran away from home, somebody brought me back.
Brought you
to
back.
him. And the punishment was worse.
Wow.
Because now I told somebody.
Did your mom know what was going on?
My mother was drinking then.
Right, so a lot
She
of it
knew.
went over her head though.
She knew.
Right.
I told her. I expressed it, but she didn't think she could make it
Without him
because he was the provider, and she had 4 children now, and in her mind, I was lying.
Wow, so
because
she felt like she
didn't
made
like
herself lie.
Because I didn't like him, she thought. So she was like, you're making this one up.
So she made herself believe it was a lie so
Right.
that she can stay comfortable.
Right.
So you got to be careful whenever your kids tell you somebody's touching on them or something. Listen up.
Yes.
Don't make excuses, even if you feel like they're lying. Still listen up.
Investigate it.
There's a lesson in that. So, what was your relationship like with God around that time?
It was very, very strong because that's the only person I could go to or confide in or cry to, because I would hide. Mm-hmm. I hid myself. I was at 10 years old. Think, you're 10. There's nothing that you could do. Somebody would seclude you off into a room or sneak into your bedroom at night and do things to you, and you can't. Even if you're saying something to someone, they're not listening to you. And every day it became more and more, further and further along on what you're doing to me, and I felt dirty.
How long did that last, that period of time?
I want 5 years.
5 years, wow. So how come you didn't have a feeling of like, I resent God because he's not saving me, as opposed to, because I found it interesting, a lot of people who was molested, raped, touched on, or went through any traumas as a kid, they either get closer to God, or they either blame God for it, or they feel resentment towards God. What stopped you from feeling that resentment towards God?
I just knew that he loved me. I don't know what a father's love is.
Right.
You know what I mean? I don't know what that is, to put my arms around a man as my father and it not turn into something sexual.
I was going to ask you, how was your, outside of being molested, how was your stepfather as a father?
I mean, he was an alcoholic also.
Right.
And he beat my mom. I mean,
right.
It wasn't, I don't want to make it like
he was just
horrifying.
No, but this is just your testimony. This is what you witnessed as a kid. I'm sure as adults, there's reasons on why everything happens.
Right.
He had his own trauma, childhood traumas that transferred over to his adulthood.
Right.
But I remember you telling me that he was racist, and that he said he was very racist to you, but you rebelled against that racism.
Yes. We lived in the Glen Hazel projects back in the 60s.
Right.
And was predominantly black back then. Well, most of the whites had moved out. So we had neighbors that my father would not let us associate with. And the craziest is that we shared a stoop. You had to go on the stoop to go to my house or your house.
With the black people.
Right. So they would be jamming, and so would I, against the wall.
Right.
So, yeah, he was racist. And I made a proclamation, and it came to pass.
And what was your proclamation?
The proclamation was, I told him I was going to have children of every color, and that none of them were ever going to fight with each other or hate each other. And he could put his last dollar on that. I was going to make that happen, because I had to prove that was going to happen.
And what's so crazy is that Aunt Donna has a whole bunch of biracial kids and grandkids. It's crazy. So that promise she made to herself as a child, she carried that out as an adult, and she had babies.
The Lord made it come to pass.
She spoke that word into existence, even as a little kid, and she's broken that generational curse of racism by allowing herself to bear children to black men and having a whole bunch of biracial. So now she's tied in to black people and black family. It's amazing how the power of love can unite people and break the color barriers.
Yes,
you know what I mean?
And once I had my children, my father completely changed.
Wow.
Completely changed. I mean, he never, to his dying day, he never felt like that again.
Wow.
Against black people or any, I mean, he used to, not just black, he was like, there's nobody but Germans.
To everybody. Yeah, like he was
I
just
don't
a
like
racist
Jewish
period.
people, Chinese people.
He was just a racist period.
Right.
So as time transitioned into teenage life, what happened as a teenager that kind of started you out? Because I know we didn't cover this, but you said that you were a shelter. Your stepfather would keep you in a house, you were very sheltered. So as a teenager, now that you rebelled, you moved out, and what happened after that?
I went to my grandparents' home to stay, but when I went there, I had to have a job. That was, you could not stay in there unless you supported yourself. And remind you, let me remind you that I'm in 11th grade.
Right.
So I got a job at night, working at a restaurant, downtown on Liberty Avenue, and I went to high school in the day.
Right.
So that's what was happening. Eventually, some other things had happened to the point where I ended up getting raped by a customer that was there.
Wow.
And took me on the north side.
Right.
And as I stood there and the police wouldn't do anything, they just kept looking at me completely naked on the street.
Wow.
Took me to a hospital. And once I got to the hospital, they put me in psychiatric because now I'm the crazy one.
Right.
But it did damage me.
Right.
Because it was the childhood all over again.
The childhood trauma of being, molested,
Touched
raped.
by, you know what I mean? Now here you are.
Unwanted. Right.
Like, why does this keep happening to me? And God, I just kept saying to him, you're either bringing me through something, or there's a reason that this is happening to me.
And you
There's
know what
a
I found out?
reason.
So many people that are experiencing this wonder why, but the reason why is because there's young girls and young men
Yes.
who actually need to see the other side of that.
Yes.
And they need to be able to hear that they can get over that hump and that they can be able to heal and recover from
Most
those traumas.
definitely.
And God will allow for you to go through it so that you can have a testimony that will cause somebody else to go
Yes.
through
That
it.
most
So that's the
definitely.
reason why. But we ultimately know all of that sin comes from Satan.
Yes.
It's all the devil's work, but God will allow it just to be able to get you anchored in Him.
Right, and the thing about that I feel is that how can you reach anybody if you've never experienced the moment?
Wow.
Like I cannot comfort you in mourning if I've never lost anybody.
Wow.
I can't speak to a drug addict
Yep.
if I've never been to the bottom of the pit.
Right.
You know what
So
I mean?
you gotta
'Cause
have some depth to
you have to
yourself.
because if you
Some
say
experience.
it to somebody, and they're like, yeah, okay.
You don't know, you haven't dealt with it. But dealing with it and being able to speak from that place has power.
Right.
So what
Yes.
happened, but I want to ask this, what happened after you got raped and everything? What type of lifestyle did that lead to?
Well, I ended up being in at the psychiatric ward. My family brought my belongings there and would never have anything else to do with me.
Wow.
It was a black man,
Right.
and so once again we went back to the racist card.
Right.
You know, so when they wanted to release me, I ended up going and getting my own apartment. I became an emancipated minor.
Right.
As I was in a home for wayward girls, because that's where they had to send me with women from Muncie or
Right.
people that were doing time and things like that. We had a house mother.
Right.
There was a young man that was there, God bless his soul, that his mom had 10 children of her own. This was a young black man who saw me and invited me home for a Thanksgiving dinner.
Right.
And his mother became my foster mother. She would
Wow.
not let me go.
Wow.
She was like, you're not going back to that home. I will go to court. I will do whatever, but you will be mine.
So you were partially raised by a black woman.
Yes, most definitely.
I can tell, right? We can tell. Well, Donna's an OG.
Yeah, most definitely.
So, okay, so what happened? How did you start getting independent? So I want to touch on your young adulthood now. So
Okay.
you was through that, and then you started becoming independent.
I
You
lived
met-
with her.
Okay.
And then the next thing I knew, I got a touch of freedom
Right.
as a 17-year-old.
From being sheltered to now freedom, so you
Right.
went buck wild.
Buckwild.
Yeah.
I was crazy.
Yeah.
You know, just because I couldn't believe people actually were out at 3 o'clock in the morning.
Right.
You know, and I thought this is the life.
Right.
This is really great.
Not knowing that the drastic trauma and the consequences that comes from
No,
living that
I
lifestyle,
didn't.
because you're young, you don't get
Yeah,
it. So then what happened? What did you get yourself
I ended up
into?
getting a job.
Right.
And I ended up getting my own apartment.
Right.
So, but I lived on Farina and
Right.
ground meat for I don't know how long.
That's cool though. You were
You know,
young. You were independent though.
So at that point I was, I want to say 17, yeah, almost 18 years old. I wasn't able to graduate
Right.
with my class, so I had to take classes at that home
To
and then get my
get
diploma.
right. So
You gotta
is
need
this
a
around the
credit.
time you started having kids?
At 19 years old, I got married.
Okay.
My husband, I met him on motorcycles.
Oh, you met him? He was a motorcycle driver?
He was a motorcycle guy.
That's crazy.
So I thought I was, okay, we can do this.
She thought she was probably. Okay, so how was that relationship? How did, now you bringing all these childhood traumas into this early marriage, how did that start affecting your life?
I was in love.
Right.
You know what I mean? To me, because I didn't know what love was. And at 19 years old, you think you're in love with the first person that comes along constantly. They treat you greatly.
Wow.
You know what I mean? And he's like, I love you.
You know what I mean? First person that you mess with, that you feel like it's everything, right?
Yeah, because.
But then sooner or later, what happens?
They give you their representation of themselves.
Right.
And then, as time went on, my husband turned into an alcoholic. And so I was reliving my childhood again.
And a lot of men and women, not just men, is not the only people who dog people. Sometimes women can come into a relationship with a certain demeanor and a certain mindset, but then after you getting engaged or married or start having kids, they change up on you.
Oh, yes.
So you got to really trust God for that partner so you can know that you're marrying somebody right. So I wanted to speak on, after you were married, after he became an alcoholic, how were you dealing with that situation and being a kid or being a mother of biracial children? Because now you have these biracial kids. What was that like, being a mom towards biracial children, dealing with an alcoholic husband?
At that time, we're talking about 1973, 74, 75.
Right.
So at that time, it wasn't a very popular thing. I caught a lot of flack with a lot of the white community.
Right.
I lived in Wilkinsburg on Hunter Street.
Right. Okay.
So that's where my children were raised at. So I was comfortable in that environment because I was raised partially by a black woman.
Right.
You know what I mean?
So you felt comfortable with it.
I rejected, unfortunately, a lot of the white
community. Right, because you felt the racism.
I felt like you didn't want me.
Right.
So I can just be myself and I'm accepted.
Wow.
You know what I mean?
Wow.
The same struggle that you're going through as a black person or a black man or a black woman or a black child, that same struggle, it's not the same. I'm telling you, it's not the same. You know what I mean? I know I'm white. I understand that.
Right.
But I was experiencing that same
treatment, and
it crushed me.
And you had those kids, so you had to basically disengage from the white community because the black community was more welcoming.
Right.
So I want to ask, what was your biggest lesson within having biracial children? Because a lot of women are out here, white women or whoever, having different nationality of children. But what is your biggest lesson in having biracial children? Like, what did it teach you?
It taught me to be very sensitive to everything. You know what I mean? Like not just go to one side or the other.
Right.
I had to, because my children, mind you, as time went on and they grew up, we were in all kinds of cultures at that time, and I needed to be sensitive to the fact that they had all kinds of friends, and it became more acceptable. The thing that crushed me the most was when somebody hurt their feelings, because I was in fight mode. I will just go on the fight mode.
Then how did
I wasn't thinking about praying.
But then how did you? But then how did you overcome that? Because, like you said, though, let's bring it back to God. You did have a relationship with God throughout all of this.
Right.
So God is the person who's really sustaining you to be able to take care of this.
Exactly.
But what did He teach you, or what do you feel like He gave you to help you overcome the struggles of being a white mom raising like black kids?
Love and forgiveness. Love and forgiveness. Because I had to forgive some people that really did me wrong.
Right.
In order for my children to have a relationship.
Wow.
I wanted them to have a relationship. I didn't want to exclude. Just because you did me wrong doesn't mean that I'm going to not give you a chance. I'm going to watch you very carefully. But I knew that God I just knew that there was another plan because, like I said, when I was young and I said, I'm having children of every color. I mean, I only had 3 children.
Right.
You know, but I ended up with 18 grandchildren and great-grandchildren.
Blessing.
That was the jewels in my crown, but everybody's different colors with different eyes and different hair.
So when did you first recognize that God brought to pass what you spoke into existence for your life? When did the Holy Spirit bring it back to you? You were like, ooh, I really lived that out, like I said, Father.
It was when I went to the ministry.
Wow.
When I was going to the ministry, see, I started out, how do I reel this in for a minute? I started out after I had my children and then got a divorce and was busting my behind on working and trying to keep my children from going. Nothing wrong with going to the projects. I just didn't want to do it at that time because I was working downtown and I thought I can sustain my lifestyle with my husband because both of us were working.
Right.
So I just didn't want to move, you know. But I got to a point where I was like, there's a better way. So I met a man.
Right. So okay. So fast forward, you got a divorce or whatever. You got out of that situation, but then so your kids are getting older now.
Right.
Okay. So
what I was saying about the grandchildren. I mean, I ended up in ministry later on down the line, and my children were away from me, and God kept giving me the scripture. I can't. Let me recall it. Holy Spirit, bring it to me. It was like something like, Rachel, don't mourn anymore. I will bring your children back to their borders from the north, the south, the east, and the west. Right. And I thought, he's really going to bring my children back to me. Right. Because I lost everything.
And that was around the time you remembered the vision or the words that you spoke and God brought it back to you, showed you, look at your kids or whatever.
Right.
So what
it was before I had grandchildren.
Yeah, it was just with your kids.
Right.
That God brought it back. So I wanted to ask this, what ways, and then we're going to move on to another section, but what ways did you end up relating to your kids? In which way did you end up becoming relatable with them being biracial and you being white? Because as a mom, you still have to find some type of relatability to be able to relate to them, even with being different. So in what ways were you able to relate to them? To help them and the reason why I ask this stuff is because a lot of people who are parents of black kids, they really find a hard balance because they can't really experience, they don't know what it's like to be.
Exactly.
You know what I mean?
Yes,
So it's
I do. I really
in what ways could you relate to them and be like, I understand. You know, I'm trying to be understanding to your life and who you are. How did you find that medium ground to stand
I think exposing them to both sides of my family, you know what I mean, from their dad and then from my side of the family. Right. And also from telling them, listen, you know, I don't know all of the struggles. I said because I knew it was always foretold that they were gonna, you know, oh, nobody's gonna accept you. You're not. You don't fit in here. You don't fit in there. And I had to say to them, I didn't fit in anywhere either.
So your relatability was showing them.
Yeah, I was like, but you can overcome this because you are a blessing that God gave me. I asked for you. I prayed for you. I wanted you. So my love for you, even though people are saying whatever, it doesn't really matter. Rise above it. Right. Because what you're feeling right now is just prejudice. It's just people. It's just, you know, ignorance.
And that's real. And a lot of people experience it. A lot of people that's watching this experience that. Even on the black side, if you marry a white person and you have kids that are biracial as a black parent, now we have to deal with, you know what I mean, what it's like to be judged by the black community. Like, oh, you're a sellout. And so it works on both ends. So if you're a black person that had kids with a white person, this is for you or vice versa. So I want to get into the drugs. When did the drugs start becoming a problem? Because I do know that Donna first was a drug dealer.
Yes.
That's how she's even gotten into doing drugs. She was first a drug dealer and she was bashing them. And then as time went on, and around all this, you had a relationship with God.
Oh, yes.
So I want to say it's possible to be in your sin and still be having a relationship with God because you haven't experienced the victory yet. So don't give up on God just because you're falling short. You stay in there.
Yeah, don't even give yourself, don't even think I'm just not worthy of this. Because let me tell you what I learned. That God loves the sinner. He hates the sin.
Period.
That's it.
Flat out.
That's it.
Flat out. That's so true.
That was the anchor that kept me.
Wow, God
That
loves
was
the
the-
sinner. So he loves me, but he hates what I do.
Right.
And that's what gives you the strength to be able to stop doing those bad habits.
Right.
So
well, just the part of, I didn't get it for a long time. Trust me.
but acceptance.
But I knew he loved me from the molestation. I knew he loved me from back then when I wanted to be a nun and all this other,
Wow.
back then at 6 or 5.
Wow.
I just knew I was going to serve God. In my spirit, I knew I
I'm
wanted
going
to
to
serve
serve
him.
God eventually.
I just knew that was going to happen. It was just an unction as a child.
Wow.
But I didn't know where or how, you know what I mean? And then once I was in the Catholic Church and doing different things, those things made me like,
Something's
you're
wrong.
not touching on the right stuff for me.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because
Right.
you were taking my Jesus out of the equation and putting
Wow.
some other people in it.
Right.
Like the saints and everybody. And I was like,
So
wait.
your Catholic experience threw
Was
you
not
off and
through-
had
yes.
you going the opposite direction.
Right, to the Baptist.
So to the Baptist. Okay, so so I want to ask though, when did you know? Because how did you start? How did you get on drugs? Because I know you went from drug dealing to being on drugs. How did that happen?
I worked like 2 jobs. My children were by themselves a lot of the times. But my daughter, let me see, let's say 8, maybe 9. She was 9. Nathan's 7, like Justin's 5 or something
Right.
like that. So I left my oldest in charge,
Right.
and I was constantly gone.
Right.
You know what I mean? Because I'm working a government job. I'm coming
Right.
home late. I'm getting their dinner. They're going to school. It was a rat race. I met a guy on my job who was a construction worker.
Right.
But little did I know he had other things going on. So we
Right.
started dating. He moved in with me, and then I saw what was
Right.
happening.
Yeah.
The real drug dealer.
Right.
That was top dog drug dealer.
So
that
through
said
the
to me,
boyfriend,
yeah.
through the boyfriend is how you became the drug dealer.
Right.
And then what happened to get you to get on the drugs?
I was giving drugs away.
Right.
I mean, that's not funny.
No,
I feel really bad
it's
about
the testimony though,
Yeah.
but it's all good.
But I was doing it, and I kept saying, God, I don't want to struggle.
Right.
I'm begging you. I really don't want to struggle. But then the enemy comes. He's not coming with horns, and he's not coming with a pitchfork. He's coming with everything that looks great.
Silence.
And he's coming to the lust of the eyes, the lust of the flesh.
Wow.
Sent me a great looking guy. Couldn't
Right.
wait to get with him.
Right.
You know what I mean? The other things that came along,
Right.
and the money, and the cars, and the.
So when did you pick up the drugs and become a user though?
I picked up the drug once I found out that people were trying to rip me off, and I said, I need to know what this is about.
Right.
Because I don't know what's happening. You know what I mean?
Rip you off like saying your drugs aren't good or
Yeah,
something?
right.
Oh.
Which I knew that they were because
Okay, so basically you was like, let me try the drugs to make sure that they're good
Right.
because y'all are stunting.
because I'm like, well, why is everybody knocking on my door like 4, 5, 6 times in one moment, and
That
you're
doesn't-
telling me that it's bad? So I thought to myself, well, that doesn't even make sense.
Right. Look how sneaky the enemy is, though, to even get you to see people addicted and to see people on the drugs and to get you to think you should try it yourself to see if
Yes.
they're lying.
Right.
The lie behind the lie.
Yes.
It's always like, that's crazy how the enemy works. We got to be so open to the Holy Spirit.
Yes, yes.
So, when did you...
that's what happened. I started testing,
Right.
different things, and
Right.
then what happened was I was making a lot of money, and I didn't have to go to work anymore.
Wow.
So I stayed home with my kids.
That was my next question. How did doing the drugs and selling the drugs change the dynamic of your family at home?
Well, I thought that this is great. I'm home. I
Wow.
can make thousands of dollars from 6
Right.
o'clock in the morning to 8 o'clock in the morning.
Right.
I have to do a couple of drop-offs here or there and a couple of pickups, and I'm good to go. But I really didn't realize the magnitude of what I was doing and how my children were watching what I did.
Wow.
It wasn't because they weren't. I didn't make them happy
Right.
with what I was giving them.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Because now you're seeing me do something other than what I was doing, which was praying.
Wow.
So now you're seeing me and you're doubting what I just taught you.
So what is the importance of living out your faith in front of your kids to see and not telling them, do as I say, not as I do? What is the importance of actually modeling that lifestyle out to them?
You must.
It's
It's everything. It's the anchor. It's the seed. It's the root. If you're going to grow a tree, you have to plant the seed.
Right.
And in order to see that blossom or come to fruition at some point, because your children believe everything that you do or say.
Wow.
At some point.
Right.
At
They're
some
watching
point,
what you say, what you do. They're believing
because
that.
they're like, well, back it up. If you can say it, then back it up. And they witnessed God doing different things as far as my poverty at some point. You know what I mean? When I was doing the struggle with the jobs.
Did they see you fall short with the drugs then? Because, okay, so now when the drugs started taking you over, how long did it take and what was the effect of now the kids seeing the drug taking you over?
Because I was no longer available.
Wow.
I shut myself in the room. You know what I mean? With the people that I was selling drugs to.
Right.
Now I'm
doing the drugs.
Now I'm not in the home.
Right.
Now you have to see me out. You know what I mean?
Wow.
Now I'm at your house and I'm waiting for you to buy off of me, but I'm using with you. My stuff is free.
Right.
But you got to buy off of me. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
And the craziest was I was getting deeper in it than you were.
Right.
And you were giving me your money.
Yup.
But mine was free, but it wasn't. It cost me almost my whole life. It cost me my whole life. It did. And then I was so sorry for what I did to other people.
Right. But you don't realize it when you're caught up in your own childhood traumas and everything that the enemy used. And what I notice is that what the devil likes to do is he sets all these little blocks.
Yes.
You feel me?
Yep.
He makes your mom do this to you, your dad do this to you, you got molested right here, this happened to you, you married the wrong person, you got into the wrong relationship, you know what I mean? This, and he does all these little strategic pieces to get you and lead you all the way up to here. And he's like, he has a plan, like, and boom, we're going to get her right here.
Right.
And it's
exactly.
like,
that's how I felt.
All that will happen to get you right here. But the beauty of it is that God uses what the enemy meant for bad and turns it to good, because you'll fall on your knees and everything that you were doing breaks you, but then that's the turning point, and that's when the victory comes in. So if you're in that season, stay strong, hold on to it.
Yes.
So what happened with the kids is you got stronger and stronger on the drugs and you started falling apart.
My children were taken away from me.
Wow.
And they were young, and they never came back to me until they were 18 and 16 years old.
How did you live with the part of that? How are you forgiving yourself? How have you forgiven yourself for that? I
didn't do that for a long period of time. You know what I mean? And let me just say this. Even if you're in the struggle of addiction, even if you get clean, the point being, your children are always going to watch you with a watchful eye because they can't trust what's going to happen next until you live out your life day by day and not do it. And just pray. You know what I mean? There was many times I went through a bunch of rehabs and came out and did it again. Right. You know what I mean? But
because God has to break that spell off of you.
Like I said, you can't just say no to a drug. You have to say yes to God. There was many times in crack houses that I was so busy talking about God that everybody wanted me to leave.
Right. So I was going to ask, how did your relationship transpire whenever you were on the drugs? Because what I noticed is people on drugs, they can either draw you closer to God or push God further away from you. So when you were on these drugs, how did like you said that you were on them, and how would it affect your relationship with God or the way you were living?
I was so ashamed of how far I had fallen. Right. You know what I mean? From grace. But I still knew He loved me. And you know what I'm saying? Even I hated myself. Right. I couldn't understand how much He loved me. Right. How could He when I can't look at myself in the mirror? Wow. I've lost my children. I'm divorced. I don't have a job. I'm evicted. I'm homeless. I'm staying in the park. I'm standing in people's doorways in the snow. I'm washing up. I'm wearing layered clothing. I'm eating at the Rainbow Kitchen. I'm going further and further to the point where I was sleeping in the cemetery because I felt dead.
Wow. That's the
I just
lowest
felt
of
dead.
the lowest. That's a low testimony.
And
look how far God brought you.
And I
Wow.
said to the Lord, if you don't do something with me, I'm taking myself out. I cannot do this anymore. And he did. He sent many a person, many.
Wow.
It wasn't just one time I tried to commit suicide. I tried it several times. And every time that I did it, because I could not stop the drug.
You couldn't stop. But how did the Spirit of God affect you while you were on the drugs? Do you feel like it still gave you power?
Oh, yeah, no, yes.
Because a lot of people don't know this, but while you're in them crack houses or while you're hanging with them friends, if you're a child of God, I just want to say this, you're a child of God in the club. You're a child of God in an abusive relationship, on drugs, in the crack house, whatever it is, if you're a child of God, God will still touch the people around you,
Oh,
even
yes,
when you're
yes.
in your sin.